Long before modern humans took their first steps across the continents, Earth belonged to a different caste of beings. They were not mythical creatures or shadows from folklore, but real populations of ancient humans whose lives unfolded in harsh climates, primeval forests and frozen plains. Their world was raw and unforgiving, shaped by fire, ice, predators, and the relentless push of evolution. In those ages, our species was not the ruler of the planet. We were just one branch among many, a small part of a massive experiment that spanned hundreds of thousands of years. But before we jump back in, drop a comment letting us know what time you're tuning in and where you're watching from. We love seeing how far our episodes are reaching. And don't forget to hit that subscribe button. It really helps us keep bringing exciting topics here on the Primal Roots channel. To understand their story, we must first understand the scale of time that shaped them. The planet has existed for more than 4 billion years, an expanse so vast that the rise of civilization fits into only the closing seconds of Earth's timeline. Even the emergence of Homo sapiens nearly 300,000 years ago is a relatively recent event. Before our arrival, the world moved according to rhythms far older than anything humans now experience. Massive climatic shifts reshaped continents. Oceans advanced and retreated. Ice sheets swallowed entire regions and then melted away. Species rose and vanished with the cold precision of natural selection. This was the backdrop against which the first human-like beings emerged. They were explorers of a world still settling into its shape, creatures shaped by danger and necessity rather than comfort. They walked landscapes filled with predators that modern humans know only through fossils. Massive cave lions, hyenas the size of horses, towering bears, and solitary saber-toothed cats. Every step carried risk. Every day demanded energy, coordination, and constant awareness. Survival was not a right. It was something earned. Among these early humans, none would leave a deeper mark on the prehistoric world than the Neanderthals. But before exploring their rise, it's essential to understand the environment that forged them. The Pleistocene was an age of extremes, where temperatures could swing dramatically in a matter of centuries. Forests could become tundra, and then return to woodland within a few generations. For any population trying to survive in such conditions, adaptability was everything. The earliest branches of the human lineage migrated out of Africa roughly 2 million years ago. These early wanderers spread across Eurasia long before Neanderthals existed. They left behind simple stone tools and scattered bones, evidence of a long, slow process of adaptation to environments far colder than those of their ancestors. Over countless generations, small isolated groups began to diverge from one another, each evolving along its own trajectory. Where resources were abundant, bodies grew larger. Where cold dominated, limbs shortened and muscles thickened. Where predators ruled, strategies became more cooperative. Neanderthals were shaped by this crucible. Emerging nearly 500,000 years ago, they became the most formidable humans of their time. Their bodies were not simply different. They were engineered by evolution to survive landscapes that would break modern humans within days. Their bones were thick and dense, built to anchor powerful muscles across the shoulders, arms, and thighs. Their rib cages were wide, allowing lungs to take in large volumes of cold, oxygen-thin air. Their noses were broad and forward-projecting, helping warm, icy breaths before they reached the lungs. Nothing about their anatomy was accidental. Every adaptation was a response to the brutal climates in which they lived. The rise of Neanderthals began with a period of repeated glaciations. Europe and Western Asia were landscapes locked in cycles of freezing and thawing. During colder periods, temperatures dropped low enough to turn valleys into sheets of ice. During warmer intervals, grasslands spread across vast plains filled with mammoths, woolly rhinos, and herds of bison. For Neanderthals, survival meant tracking these herds, understanding their movements, and enduring the predators that stalked them. They moved through forests, rocky highlands, and frozen tundra with a confidence that came from generations of adaptation. The earliest stages of their evolution are preserved in fragments scattered from Spain to Siberia. These fossils reveal a slow transformation. Early forms show features still reminiscent of earlier humans. narrower bodies, longer limbs, and less pronounced facial structures. But as climate pressures intensified, the changes accelerated. Bones thickened, muscles grew, faces projected forward to support larger sinuses. The Neanderthals of later millennia were fully formed, powerful, cold-adapted humans built for endurance and strength. But their abilities extended far beyond physical power. They crafted tools with deliberate technique, shaping stone flakes into scrapers, blades, and spear points. Their hunting strategies required coordination, planning, and communication. They survived injuries that would have been fatal without the help of others, showing that they cared for their sick and elderly. These were not primitive brutes. They were resilient, social, and intelligent, masters of the environments that shaped them. Their story begins in this world of shifting ice and roaring winds, where survival required more than strength. It demanded memory, cooperation, and an intimate understanding of the land. Over time, Neanderthals would become some of the most successful humans ever to walk the earth, dominating their territories for more than 300,000 years, a span far longer than our species has existed so far. This chapter ends at the threshold of their rise. Ahead lies a deeper dive into their complex lives, their family groups, their battles with predators, their interactions with early Homo sapiens, and the eventual decline of a lineage that once seemed unbreakable. The world before modern humans was rich, violent, and filled with life forms that shaped our destiny in ways we are only beginning to understand. And at the heart of that world stood the Neanderthals, creatures of ice and endurance, the undisputed humans of their age. As the Pleistocene tightened its grip on the planet, the world of ancient humans grew colder, darker, and far more unforgiving. Environments were no longer stable landscapes, but shifting battlegrounds, where survival depended on endurance and insight. Seasons blurred into long winters, forests thinned beneath the weight of advancing glaciers, and the availability of food rose and fell with brutal unpredictability. It was in this crucible of instability that the Neanderthals began to transform, slowly at first, then unmistakably, into one of the most physically adapted human species ever to walk the earth. The earliest forms of pre-Neanderthals lived in conditions that modern humans could barely tolerate. Their bones reveal a life defined by constant strain, thick shafts shaped by relentless movement, joints stressed from carrying heavy loads, and fractures that healed only because someone cared enough to help them recover. In this world, cooperation was not a luxury. It was the foundation of existence. Every hunt required coordination. Every shelter demanded shared labor. Alone, an individual could do little. Together, groups carved out a living from land that seemed determined to erase them. As temperatures dropped across Europe and Western Asia, evolution accelerated. Populations faced repeated cycles of cold so severe that entire regions became wastelands of blowing ice and frozen soil. Only species capable of extraordinary resilience could survive. The Neanderthals did more than survive. They adapted in ways that rewrote the human blueprint. Their bodies grew compact and immensely powerful. Shorter limbs reduced heat loss, while barrel-shaped chests expanded lung capacity. Muscles thickened to levels unmatched by any other human species. Their shoulders rotated with impressive strength, allowing them to thrust heavy spears repeatedly, an advantage when facing mammoths, rhinos, and other megafauna that dominated Pleistocene landscapes. Their hands, broad and strong, could snap branches, scrape hides, and shape stone with precision. Every feature reflected the same evolutionary message. Endurance was everything. Even their skulls bore signs of adaptation. The iconic Neanderthal brow ridge was not a symbol of primitiveness, but a reinforcement structure that helped absorb forces from powerful biting and chewing. Their faces projected forward, providing space for sinuses that warmed icy breaths. Their teeth were large, durable tools that served not only for eating, but for gripping materials, a habit visible in wear patterns etched into ancient enamel. In the bitter cold, where fire could fail and shelters could collapse under snow, these physical traits made a crucial difference. Still, strength alone could not guarantee survival. The Neanderthals developed a sophisticated understanding of their environment. reading animal migrations, tracking subtle signs in the soil, and navigating forests and cliffs with uncanny memory. Their hunting strategies were deliberate and coordinated. They targeted large prey, bison, reindeer, wild horses, with spears designed for close-range impact. Such hunting required bravery and unity. One mistake could mean catastrophic injury, and yet their bones show they did it routinely. Their tools reflect this commitment to mastery. Unlike earlier humans who relied on simple flakes of stone, Neanderthals crafted tools using the levallois technique, a complex method involving shaping stone cores so flakes of predetermined size and shape could be removed with a single strike. This required planning, geometry, and mental foresight. Their scrapers processed hides into clothing that kept bodies warm against cutting winds. Their blades butchered animals with efficiency that left almost no waste. Their craftsmanship was not primitive. It was optimized for the world they dominated. Though the stereotype paints them as brutish, the truth is far richer. The Neanderthals developed cognitive capacities suited to survival in icy, resource-scarce environments. They recognized the importance of shelter and built structures in caves and open landscapes. Some sites show evidence of circular arrangements of stones and bones, likely used to break wind or anchor coverings. Hearths appear repeatedly in occupation layers, revealing long-term use of fire for cooking, warmth, and nighttime protection. They also exhibited deep social bonds. Many skeletons show healed injuries far too severe for an individual to manage alone. Broken bones mended, infections treated, and severe trauma survived only because groups provided care. This compassion contradicts outdated narratives of Neanderthals as savage or solitary. Their societies relied on empathy, cooperation, and ritualized roles, skills every bit as human as those of Homo sapiens. But while their world demanded strength and unity, it did not grant stability. Glacial cycles constantly reshaped the continent. During warmer interglacial periods, forests expanded and prey scattered, requiring groups to travel farther. When cold returned, ice sheets advanced, pushing communities into new territories or confining them to shrinking refuges. These shifts forced Neanderthals to adapt again and again, building a cultural resilience that matched their physical one. This constant movement created genetic diversity across regions. Neanderthals in Western Europe developed slightly different traits from those in the Levant or Central Asia. Their technologies varied according to available resources. Their diets shifted based on local prey. Some regions favored large game hunting, others demanded fishing, shellfish gathering, or exploiting smaller animals. Yet across all variations, the core features of Neanderthal life remained: strength, endurance, cooperation, and a profound connection with the rhythms of the land. As they refined their skills, the Pleistocene became not just their home, but their empire. From the Atlantic to Siberia, they left traces of their presence: campsites littered with stone flakes, bones cracked to extract marrow, and burn patterns from ancient fires. Their footprints marked caves, river valleys, and highland passes. For more than 300,000 years, they were the dominant humans in these regions. However, their world was never entirely safe. Megafauna such as cave lions, hyenas, and giant bears constantly shadowed their movements. Neanderthal bones display injuries consistent with predator attacks: claw marks, bite scars, and crushing fractures. Even so, they did not flee from these creatures. They confronted them. Some evidence suggests that Neanderthals hunted carnivores to protect their territories or access carcasses. In a world ruled by predators, bravery became a survival tool. The pressures of climate, predators, and constant migration refined Neanderthal society into a highly efficient system. Groups learned to share resources, minimize risk, and maintain cohesion through harsh winters. Their population sizes remained small, but their adaptability allowed them to endure long stretches of scarcity. Children learned survival skills young. Elders contributed knowledge of landscapes and animal behavior. Every member held value. But amid all this resilience, the seeds of vulnerability were already present. Their specialization, so effective in their icy world, limited their ability to thrive in radically different environments. Their hunting strategies relied on close-range weapons requiring tremendous strength. Their metabolism demanded calorie-rich diets, especially in winter. Their population density remained low, making genetic bottlenecks more likely. Their cultural innovations evolved slowly because stability, not rapid experimentation, had long been the key to endurance. For most of their existence, these vulnerabilities were manageable. The world they inhabited changed often, but never in ways beyond their capacity to adapt. They were the humans of the Ice Age, creatures honed by cold and danger, intimately linked to the land that formed them. But new forces were gathering beyond the horizon. Shifts in global temperature were beginning to reshape ecosystems at a scale unseen for hundreds of thousands of years. New human species, smaller-bodied, more flexible, and culturally explosive, were emerging in regions far from Europe. And somewhere in Africa, Homo sapiens were developing technologies, social structures, and survival strategies that would eventually transform the planet. For now, though, the Neanderthals stood strong. They were the apex humans of their age, unmatched in physical prowess, deeply connected to their environment, and adapted with extraordinary precision to the harshest climates on Earth. Their story was only beginning. The next chapters would reveal their ingenuity, their conflicts, their moments of triumph, and the forces that would eventually bring their long reign to an end. The world that shaped the early Neanderthals was not merely cold, it was unstable in a way the modern climate can barely replicate. The Pleistocene did not freeze Europe once and leave it that way. It pulsed. Temperatures rose and fell with brutal rhythm, ice pushing forward and then retreating in cycles that lasted thousands of years. Forests appeared and disappeared, rivers carved new paths, only to freeze beneath miles of glacial weight. For the humans who inhabited these shifting landscapes, survival required not just strength, but constant reinvention. From the earliest pre-Neanderthal populations, evolution began sculpting bodies capable of enduring extremes few species could tolerate. Across generations, traits that enhanced cold resistance became more common. The transformation was not sudden. It accumulated slowly, encoded in bone, muscle, and metabolism, turning an ordinary hominin into one of the most physically formidable humans ever to live. The process started with climate. The cold was not a simple absence of warmth. It was an active force shaping everything. Food scarcity placed relentless pressure on populations. When herbivores declined, predators multiplied. When predators multiplied, hunting became more dangerous. Those who survived were the ones who adapted quickest, a rhythm that molded Neanderthal physiology from the inside out. Their bones tell the clearest part of this story. The shafts of their long bones are unusually thick, suggesting constant mechanical strain. Their joints reveal decades of repetitive labor, from lifting heavy hides to dragging carcasses across frozen plains. Their spines and pelvises show stress from hauling meat, wood, stones, and tools. Their rib cages flare outward, creating space for lungs capable of processing frigid, oxygen-thin air. Even their fingers grew broad and powerful, evolving into tools as essential as the stone blades they crafted. This physical robustness was not redundant muscle. It was engineered survival. In sub-zero temperatures, large, powerful muscles retain heat efficiently, and a compact body reduces exposure. Every millimeter of Neanderthal anatomy reflects that principle. Their forearms and shins shortened over time, a phenomenon documented in nearly all cold-adapted mammals, reducing heat loss through extremities. Their faces grew forward in a distinctive mid-facial projection, allowing cold air to warm before reaching the lungs. A trait once misunderstood as brutish now stands recognized as a masterpiece of evolutionary engineering. Yet strength and endurance were only half the picture. The Ice Age demanded intelligence, not abstract, symbolic thought like the kind modern humans specialize in, but practical intelligence, situational awareness, memory mapping, environmental reading, and strategic coordination. Neanderthals needed to know migration routes, water cycles, seasonal plant availability, and the shifting behavior of predators. They needed the ability to detect subtle signs in the snow, to track prey over long distances, and to act instantly when danger approached. The stone tools they created reveal their cognitive world. Their preferred technique, known as the Levallois method, required planning far beyond simple flake production. Stone cores were shaped through a series of controlled strikes, each one preparing the next. When executed correctly, a single blow produced a flake with the exact shape and sharpness the toolmaker intended. This was not improvisation. It was prehistoric geometry applied with precision. The consistency of this method across Europe and Western Asia suggests shared knowledge networks, stretching across generations and vast territories. Their tools were not decorative. They were functional extensions of their bodies. Scrapers softened hides used for clothing. Spears crafted with heavy wooden shafts and flint points allowed them to hunt massive herbivores. Cutting tools processed meat, tendons, and fat, resources crucial for energy in freezing climates. Fire-hardened spear tips reveal an understanding of material enhancement long before metallurgy existed. Their hunting strategies were equally advanced. Fossil evidence shows that Neanderthals often hunted from close range, using thrusting spears rather than projectiles. To kill a bison or a woolly rhino this way required courage and impeccable coordination. Groups likely approached prey quietly, surrounding it or driving it into difficult terrain. Injuries recorded in Neanderthal skeletons, broken ribs, arm fractures, skull traumas, mirror the wounds found in professional rodeo riders and big game hunters today, reinforcing the picture of a species engaged in high-risk hunts that demanded precision and group trust. But violence was not the only constant in their lives. Neanderthal groups displayed social structures every bit as human as their anatomy. Bones with severe injuries, crushed limbs, damaged hips, or badly fractured skulls show signs of long-term healing. Individuals who would have been helpless alone survived because others cared for them. This level of compassion suggests that these ancient humans formed tight-knit communities where age, wisdom, and experience held value. Their shelters, too, reveal organization. While caves offered natural protection, many regions lacked them, forcing Neanderthals to build structures using wood, stone, or bones. Some sites contain arrangements of mammoth bones forming circular foundations, likely covered with hides. Others show evidence of hearths used for thousands of years, the ash layers building up like pages in a book of daily life. Fire was used for cooking, warmth, nighttime security, and keeping predators at bay. Its presence at nearly every site demonstrates that it was as central to their world as it is to ours. They were not simply wandering nomads. They were long-term residents of territories they understood intimately. Generations lived and died in the same valleys, hunted the same passes, and built memories into the land. Their tracks, though erased by time, once traced familiar paths across glacial plains and riverbanks. As the millennia passed, Neanderthals became the dominant humans across their range. Their populations fluctuated with climate cycles, but maintained a strong presence from the Atlantic coast to Central Asia. Even when some regions became uninhabitable, they relocated, adapted, and reclaimed land when conditions improved. Their resilience was astonishing, and for hundreds of thousands of years, no other humans challenged their dominance. Yet the very forces that built them also began to expose their vulnerabilities. Specialization is evolution's greatest gift and its greatest risk. Neanderthals were optimized for cold, for close-range hunting, for diets heavy in large mammals, and for low population density. When environments changed too quickly, the traits that once ensured survival could become liabilities. Some interglacial periods created warmer climates, expanding forests and reducing open hunting grounds. Prey became more dispersed, requiring longer travel distances and more energy. Warmer ecosystems favored smaller animals, fish, and plants. Resources Neanderthal diets were less optimized to exploit. Meanwhile, volcanic eruptions in certain regions temporarily devastated ecosystems, leading to sharp declines in food availability. Still, they endured. Throughout these climatic fluctuations, Neanderthals pushed through adversity with a combination of strength, memory, and stubborn resilience. But on the edges of their world, a different human species was rising. Smaller, lighter, more flexible, and capable of innovations that would soon shift the trajectory of prehistory. The arrival of Homo sapiens was not immediate or dramatic. Their expansion from Africa took thousands of years, unfolding slowly across the Middle East before advancing into Eurasia. But even before contact, the seeds of a coming transformation were already sown. For now, in this chapter, the Neanderthals stand fully formed, masters of survival, architects of adaptation, and the undisputed humans of the Ice Age. Their bodies were forged by cold, their minds were sharpened by danger. Their societies stood strong against the harshest climates Earth had produced in millions of years. But the next phases of their story would bring challenges unlike any they had ever known. Challenges not from the land, nor from predators, but from another species that would soon change the world forever. The Ice Age was not just a backdrop for Neanderthals. It was the battlefield that defined every moment of their existence. The world they inhabited was filled with creatures so large, powerful, and unpredictable that modern humans can scarcely imagine encountering them without weapons, vehicles, or technology. For Neanderthals, these animals were not museum fossils or textbook illustrations. They were daily threats, competitors, and sometimes even opportunities. To live in the Pleistocene meant to stand face to face with the giants of a fading Earth. Across the vast plains of Ice Age Europe, herds of woolly mammoths moved like mobile landscapes, each weighing more than 6 tons and carrying tusks longer than a grown man. Their migrations shaped entire ecosystems, flattening vegetation, creating trails, and influencing predator behavior. Nearby roamed woolly rhinoceroses, massive beasts armored in thick fur and capable of charging with devastating force. Steppe bison, larger than any modern cattle, formed herds in the tens of thousands, sweeping across valleys in dark, thundering waves. Neanderthals depended on these animals for survival. Their diets reveal a heavy reliance on large herbivores, whose flesh, fat, and marrow provided the calorie-dense nutrition necessary for maintaining their enormous metabolic demands. Hunting these creatures required cooperation on a scale unmatched by most predators. It was not simple ambush work. It was strategic warfare against animals that could kill a hunter with a single misplaced step. Many Neanderthal skeletons bear the marks of these confrontations: fractured ribs, crushed limbs, dislocated joints, and spine injuries consistent with impacts from massive animals. But even these colossal herbivores were not the most dangerous creatures on the landscape. The true masters of the Ice Age were the predators. Towering cave lions prowled the plains, significantly larger than modern African lions, and capable of bringing down prey far heavier than themselves. Some estimates suggest these lions rivaled tigers in size, their muscular bodies optimized for sprinting across frozen ground. Packs of Ice Age hyenas, powerful enough to crush bones with their jaws, roamed in groups that behaved less like scavengers and more like coordinated hunters. Short-faced bears, enormous creatures standing up to 12 feet tall when upright, dominated kill sites, forcing other predators away with their sheer size. To survive in this world, Neanderthals had to understand predator behavior in intimate detail. They read paw tracks in snow and mud, examined claw marks on trees, and listened to distant calls that signaled danger or opportunity. If a cave lion pride took down a mammoth, Neanderthals needed to know whether it was safe to approach for scavenging. If a hyena clan moved into a valley, it meant higher risk of nighttime raids. Predator patterns shaped migration routes, determined where fires were built, and influenced which caves became long-term shelters. Neanderthals themselves occupied a unique position in this hierarchy. They were both hunters and potential prey. Their strength allowed them to defend themselves in ways no other hominin could. Their spears, though not ranged weapons, were deadly in close quarters. Their cooperation gave them a strategic advantage. But predators remained a constant existential threat. Archaeological evidence shows Neanderthal bones bearing punctures consistent with lion fangs and hyena jaws. Some skulls reveal deep bites that could only come from massive carnivores. These were not isolated incidents. They were a grim reality of daily life. This tension between predator and prey forged the behavioral patterns of Neanderthal groups. Their camps were rarely established in open fields. They preferred elevated positions, cliffside shelters, narrow valleys with defensible entry points, or deep caves that acted as natural fortresses. Their hearths were often placed near cave mouths, creating a barrier of firelight that deterred animals from entering at night. The placement of these hearths reveals sophisticated spatial awareness, suggesting they used fire strategically, not only for warmth and cooking but for security. Inside these shelters, Neanderthal groups organized their activities with remarkable efficiency. Meat drying, hide scraping, tool repair, and shelter preparation were likely divided among individuals according to skill and physical ability. Elder members likely contributed knowledge, migration schedules, weather patterns, predator behavior, while younger ones provided labor. Childhood was not sheltered. Children learned by watching, imitating, and participating. Every member of the group was necessary for survival, and this interdependence fostered strong social bonds. Their daily routines revolved around mobility. Neanderthals were not aimless wanderers. They followed seasonal rhythms. Prey animals migrated to avoid the coldest regions or to find fresh vegetation. Neanderthals moved accordingly, balancing risk and reward. They knew when herds were fattened and when they were weakened. They understood how weather influenced animal behavior. They anticipated shifts in the landscape, making them one of the most ecologically attuned human species ever to exist. Still, their reliance on megafauna came with a cost. Large animals reproduce slowly and are sensitive to environmental change. When climates shifted too rapidly or ecosystems collapsed temporarily, after a volcanic eruption, for example, food could vanish for months or even years. During these periods, Neanderthals were forced to diversify their diets. Evidence from certain sites shows they hunted smaller animals such as ibex, deer, and hares. They also gathered plants, nuts, and berries when available. But these foods alone could not sustain them long-term. Their bodies demanded dense calories that only large prey could reliably provide. This nutritional dependence shaped not just their diet, but their culture. Hunts required knowledge accumulated over generations. Toolkits were adapted to prey type. Campsites were placed to intercept migrations or ambush opportunities. Fire was used to process large quantities of meat, preserve fat, and render bones for marrow and grease. These practices created a rhythm of life defined by the movement of animals. A rhythm that governed where Neanderthals slept, when they traveled, how they communicated, and how they organized their societies. Despite their immense resilience, Neanderthals were not invincible. Their intense reliance on big-game hunting created vulnerability during ecological downturns. A warming period could push mammoths northward, leaving Neanderthals with limited prey. Conversely, a sudden freeze could trap herds behind ice barriers or kill vegetation essential to herbivores. The Ice Age was unpredictable, and even the strongest humans were at its mercy. Their competitors, the predators, adapted faster. Hyenas, for example, could switch between hunting and scavenging as needed. Lions followed migrating herds with effortless speed. Wolves could travel farther than Neanderthal groups with fewer resources. These predators had evolved for flexibility, while Neanderthals had evolved for specialization. Still, they endured for more than 300,000 years, a longevity that modern humans have yet to surpass. Their ability to read the land, withstand cold, hunt cooperatively, and build social cohesion made them masters of the Pleistocene in every sense. But their mastery existed within a delicate balance, one that depended on consistent ecological rhythms. Eventually, those rhythms began to shift in ways that would threaten everything they had built. As climates warmed and cooled in increasingly unstable cycles, the megafauna populations on which Neanderthals relied began to fluctuate unpredictably. Some species declined permanently, others migrated beyond Neanderthal reach. Forests expanded into former hunting grounds, breaking open plains into scattered woodlands. These environmental changes forced Neanderthals into new territories, increasing encounters with predators and reducing available shelter. And as this instability grew, Another force began approaching from the south, a human species far more adaptable, far more flexible, and equipped with tools and strategies that would reshape the entire prehistoric world. For the moment, however, the Neanderthals remained the rulers of the Ice Age. They were the apex humans, forged in an era of beasts and extremes. Their bodies carried the memory of generations spent in constant conflict with the land and its predators. Their eyes watched the horizon with the caution of a species that knew danger could appear at any moment. They were strong, clever, and determined. But the next chapter of their story would bring challenges far more complex than mammoths or lions. The world was about to change, and the Neanderthals, despite all their power, would face a rival unlike any they had encountered before. Long before the two species ever saw each other's faces, the world had already begun preparing the stage for their meeting. Climate swings reshaped forests into plains and plains into tundra. Rivers shifted, carving new boundaries through the land. Herd migrations changed routes that had existed for millennia. And on the southern and eastern edges of Eurasia, a new kind of human was slowly expanding. One smaller in body, more flexible in behavior, and driven by a relentless tendency to adapt. Homo sapiens had emerged not from a land of endless cold, but from regions where climates changed often enough to demand innovation. These early humans had learned to survive by experimenting. New hunting tools, new foods, new materials, new strategies. Their bodies reflected this versatility. Lighter frames, longer limbs, and skeletal structures built for endurance over long distances. They were not stronger than Neanderthals, not by any measure. But they were astonishingly adaptable, capable of thriving across environments that shifted too quickly for specialization to dominate. For thousands of years, both species lived in separate worlds, each shaping its own traditions, technologies, and survival strategies. But migration patterns eventually brought them into contact. The earliest meeting points are believed to have been in the Levant, a region that oscillated between open grasslands and lush forests, depending on the climate cycle. In colder phases, Neanderthals moved south. In warmer phases, Homo sapiens pushed north. These oscillations created windows of coexistence where the two species occupied the same landscapes, drank from the same rivers, and hunted the same animals. The first encounters were likely cautious and distant. Both species were experienced trackers. They would have noticed each other long before seeing a face or hearing a voice. Footprints told stories, the size, weight, gait, and group structure of the individuals who made them. Neanderthal tracks were deeper, their footprints broad and heavy. Sapiens tracks were longer, narrower, lighter. Even without words, each species would have recognized the presence of another intelligent competitor. These early meetings were not necessarily violent. The archaeological record suggests long periods where both groups coexisted without signs of large-scale conflict. There were vast territories to share, abundant prey during favorable climates, and enough space to avoid each other when necessary. But coexistence did not mean equality. Each species viewed the world through its own evolutionary experiences, and their differences shaped how they reacted to one another. Neanderthals were territorial. Their populations were small, their mobility limited by the demands of large-game hunting, and their social groups tightly bonded by kinship. They defended known land, returning generation after generation to the same valleys, caves, and hunting routes. Sapiens, on the other hand, were explorers. Their groups were larger and often included unrelated individuals. Their societies were structured around social cooperation beyond immediate kin. They moved frequently, following seasonal resources, and their flexibility allowed them to exploit new patches of land quickly. These contrasts created tension long before direct conflict became inevitable. For Neanderthals, the arrival of a roaming, fast-breeding, tool-making species likely represented a threat unlike any predator they had known. For modern humans, Neanderthals must have appeared like giants of an older world. Powerful, skilled, deeply rooted in their territories, but limited in their numbers, and less capable of changing strategies on short notice. The cultural differences were equally profound. Neanderthal stone tools were highly efficient, particularly for hunting and processing large animals. Their Levallois technique produced durable, standardized flakes ideal for tough environments. Homo sapiens, meanwhile, began experimenting with more varied technologies. Blades, points, bone tools, projectile weapons. These innovations were not necessarily superior at first, but they demonstrated flexibility and an ability to specialize tools for different contexts. As sapiens expanded into Eurasia, groups likely observed Neanderthal habits from a distance: how they hunted, where they sheltered, how they interacted with predators. Sapiens communities may have avoided direct confrontation at first, choosing instead to settle in nearby regions, rich in smaller prey and edible plants. This niche partitioning reduced competition temporarily, allowing both species to coexist side by side. But environmental pressures continued to intensify. The climate swung again, and with it came changes that destabilized the balance. Forests thinned into open plains, reducing shelter and increasing exposure to predators. Some megafauna populations declined in certain regions, forcing both species to shift diets and expand territories. Competition for resources began to overlap more frequently, turning once separate lifestyles into intersecting paths. It was during these periods of instability that interactions deepened. Shared hunting grounds meant increased chances of encounters. Abandoned kill sites became contested resources. The smell of fire drifting through a valley could attract attention from miles away, signaling either opportunity or danger. Tracks in the snow or mud forced each species to assess whether to approach, avoid, or challenge. The archaeological evidence indicates that some encounters resulted in violence. Trauma patterns on certain Neanderthal remains suggest weapons consistent with long-range projectiles, a technology associated with Homo sapiens. Yet these cases are rare and do not necessarily represent systematic conflict. Just as with modern hunter-gatherer societies, coexistence likely fluctuated between peaceful distance, cautious observation, and occasional aggression. Curiously, genetic evidence reveals another side of this relationship: interbreeding. The fact that nearly all non-African humans today carry Neanderthal DNA indicates that contact was not solely defined by hostility. These interactions were complex, involving cooperation, alliances, exchanges of individuals, and shared knowledge across different groups and regions. This interbreeding also suggests that Neanderthals recognized sapiens as humans, not as animals or enemies, but as beings similar enough to integrate into their own communities. Still, coexistence brought challenges for Neanderthals. Their population size was far lower, likely no more than a few tens of thousands across their entire range. Homo sapiens, conversely, appeared in larger numbers and reproduced quickly. Their social networks were broader, linking distant groups and enabling faster spread of new ideas and tools. Innovations traveled with them across continents. When one group developed a better hunting method or a new tool type, others adopted it rapidly. Neanderthals did not operate with such expansive networks. Their groups were small and isolated, reducing the speed and scale at which cultural innovations could spread. This difference became significant as climates continued to change. When prey scarcity demanded new strategies, sapiens adapted quickly. Neanderthals, optimized for a world of large herbivores and stable territories, faced increasing constraints. As sapiens pushed farther into Europe, they entered environments Neanderthals had dominated for thousands of generations. These lands held deep cultural meaning for Neanderthal communities. Valleys where they had hunted mammoths for centuries, caves filled with generations of hearth ash, migration paths encoded in collective memory. The arrival of a new species on such ancestral ground must have triggered both caution and resistance. There were likely regions where coexistence lasted for centuries. Trade or resource sharing may have occurred sporadically, especially in border zones where populations were low and landscapes vast. But in areas where prey was scarce and land limited, conflict would have been difficult to avoid. Sapiens had advantages in mobility and innovation, while Neanderthals possessed strength, intimate ecological knowledge, and deep territorial familiarity. The archaeological record hints at these struggles in subtle ways: shifts in tool distributions, changes in settlement patterns, signs of defensive positioning near cave entrances, and periods of abandonment in once populated valleys. These patterns do not tell stories of sudden displacement, but of long, slow pressures building over generations. Yet the downfall of Neanderthals was not solely the result of competition. Climate instability placed enormous strain on their populations. Diseases introduced by contact with sapiens may have spread more easily through small, isolated groups. Genetic bottlenecks weakened resilience. And their specialization, once a monumental strength, became a vulnerability in a rapidly changing world. As more sapiens settled across Europe and Asia, they created dense networks of communication. Ideas traveled faster than migrations. Symbolic behavior, art, ornaments, ritual, strengthened social cohesion, allowing larger groups to coordinate and share identity across distance. Such cohesion helped them withstand ecological shocks that fractured more isolated populations. By the time Neanderthals realized the long-term implications of this expanding presence, the balance of power had already shifted. Their world was shrinking, their refugees became fewer, their prey herds declined, their once spacious territories fragmented into scattered pockets of habitable land. The meeting of these two human species, once calm, distant, and even intimate, had transformed into a silent struggle for survival. Not a war in the modern sense, but a slow replacement shaped by population size, adaptability, and environmental change. Neanderthals did not vanish instantly. They persisted for thousands of years after the arrival of sapiens. They continued hunting, building shelters, raising children, lighting fires in caves where their ancestors had lived for centuries. They were not relics fading into oblivion. They were a people fighting to endure in a world that no longer favored their strengths. But the final chapters of their story were already being written. And soon, the last great epoch of Neanderthal dominance would give way to the rise of a different kind of human, one whose descendants would carry faint traces of Neanderthal memory in their DNA, but little understanding of the world that shaped them. Long after Homo sapiens began spreading across Eurasia, the Neanderthals still held their ground in the rugged mountains, deep valleys, and familiar hunting territories they had mastered for hundreds of thousands of years. They remained powerful, skilled, and intimately connected to their landscapes. Firelight still flickered inside their ancestral caves. Spears still pierced the hides of bison and ibex. Children still learned the ancient rhythms of survival that had carried their people through ice, famine, and predation. But beneath the surface of daily life, the foundations of their world were shifting. Climate cycles that had once followed predictable patterns began oscillating with increasing instability. Winters grew harsher in some regions, while others experienced warming phases that disrupted the movements of prey. Rivers redirected courses. Forests expanded where plains had once existed. The very structure of their ecosystems, the balance they had relied on for generations, began fracturing. Neanderthals were specialists. Their bodies, tools, diets, and behavioral strategies were fine-tuned for a particular set of conditions. Cold climates, large herbivores, low population density, and territorial familiarity. When any of these pillars weakened, the strain was manageable. But when all of them shifted at once, the cumulative pressure became overwhelming. The first major blow came from ecological disruption. Mammoths, woolly rhinoceroses, and giant deer experienced dramatic population declines in several regions. Climate fluctuations altered vegetation patterns, leading to inconsistent food availability. Some valleys that once supported massive herds became forests where large herbivores were less abundant. In other areas, prey migrated along unfamiliar paths or vanished entirely for seasons at a time. For a species that depended heavily on big game hunting, this instability was catastrophic. Neanderthal physiology, built for intense bursts of strength and rapid calorie consumption, struggled during periods of scarcity. Their metabolisms burned through energy reserves quickly, making long-term hunger far more dangerous. In times when food was abundant, they thrived. But when prey became unpredictable, their survival margin thinned dramatically. At the same time, small and isolated populations made recovery difficult. Neanderthals never numbered more than a few tens of thousands across their entire range, a population size smaller than many modern cities. These groups were often separated by mountains, rivers, and enormous distances. When one group suffered heavy losses due to illness, famine, or conflict, there were few opportunities for reinforcements or genetic exchange. Over generations, this isolation led to reduced genetic diversity, limiting resilience against new threats. Disease may have accelerated this decline. When Homo sapiens migrated into Neanderthal territories, they likely brought pathogens to which Neanderthals had no immunity, just as later occurred during historical encounters between isolated human populations. Even a disease that caused mild symptoms among sapiens could spread rapidly through small Neanderthal communities, leaving long-lasting demographic damage. Yet their disappearance was not a simple clash between species. It was a mosaic of pressures, ecological, biological, cultural, and competitive, unfolding slowly over thousands of years. In some regions, Neanderthals appear to have retreated into shrinking refuges, inhabiting areas that remained stable enough to support hunting traditions. Coastal shelters, mountain passes, and deep river valleys became the last strongholds of a species that had once commanded an entire continent. These refuges offered temporary safety, but they also created bottlenecks. As territories contracted, so did resources, and groups that once roamed vast landscapes now competed within limited boundaries. Meanwhile, Homo sapiens populations expanded. Their flexible diets, broader social networks, and capacity for long-distance movement allowed them to thrive in ecosystems that challenged Neanderthal survival. Sapiens hunted both large and small animals, fished rivers and coastlines, gathered plants widely, and created specialized tools that diversified their food sources. Their ability to adapt rapidly to environmental change gave them a long-term edge. As sapiens spread, they introduced new forms of competition. Their group sizes were larger, their birth rates higher, and their social cooperation extended far beyond immediate family ties. When one group learned a new technology, the knowledge spread quickly across vast distances. Innovations in toolmaking, blades, bone points, adhesives, hafted weapons, proliferated rapidly. Even symbolic behaviors like body decoration and rituals strengthened group cohesion, improving survival through shared identity and communication. Neanderthals, with their smaller and more isolated communities, struggled to match this pace of cultural transmission. Their tools remained highly effective for the tasks they were designed for, but their rate of innovation was slow. In a stable world, this would not have mattered. In a rapidly changing world, it became a disadvantage. Contact between the species continued for millennia. Some encounters were peaceful, involving exchanges of individuals and possibly knowledge. Genetic evidence confirms interbreeding, suggesting that relationships were not always hostile and sometimes deeply personal. But coexistence also had limits. The expanding presence of sapiens gradually displaced Neanderthal groups from key hunting grounds and shelters. As their populations diminished, their ability to maintain cultural continuity and ecological dominance diminished as well. There were likely moments of desperation. Neanderthal groups pushed into marginal environments, following dwindling prey herds. They revisited ancient caves whose hearths had burned for generations, but burned no more. Hunters who once faced mammoths with confidence now confronted hunger as their ecosystems collapsed around them. Their unrivaled strength, once their greatest asset, became a burden when food scarcity turned calorie consumption into a constant threat. Yet even in decline, Neanderthals demonstrated resilience. The archaeological record shows that they adopted some innovations from sapiens, including new tool types and symbolic practices. Their final refuges, such as sites in Iberia, reveal signs of continued adaptation. They endured far longer than many species would under such intense pressure, a testament to their toughness and ingenuity. But in the end, the weight of compound challenges proved too great. Climate instability continued. Prey populations collapsed in region after region. Disease and competition strained already fragile demographics. Social networks shrank beyond the thresholds needed to sustain cultural knowledge. One by one, the last Neanderthal groups died out, leaving empty caves, abandoned tools, and footprints fading in the earth. Their extinction was not sudden. It unfolded slowly, a long twilight rather than a single catastrophe. Some valleys may have remained inhabited for generations after neighboring groups disappeared. Fires likely burned in Neanderthal shelters long after most of Europe had become home to Homo sapiens. Their final individuals were not relics, but living members of a proud lineage that had survived every imaginable hardship, until the world changed faster than evolution could respond. And then, eventually, silence. The last Neanderthal child grew up in a world already slipping away, surrounded by memories passed down from ancestors who had once roamed continents. When that lineage ended, so too did one of the most extraordinary chapters in human evolution. Yet their story did not vanish entirely. A small part of them lives on in nearly every person outside Africa, carried as fragments of DNA, echoes of ancient encounters, preserved in the genomes of modern humans. These genetic remnants influence immune responses, skin adaptations, metabolism, and even aspects of physical structure. They are the enduring legacy of a species that shaped our prehistory in ways we are only beginning to understand. More importantly, the archaeological record preserves the imprint of their existence: stone tools refined through patient skill, hearths layered with ash from countless meals, shelters built with ingenuity, and bones that reveal both hardship and resilience. These traces speak of a species that endured ice, predators, scarcity, and competition for hundreds of thousands of years, far longer than the entire span of recorded human history. The Neanderthals were not failures. They were a masterpiece of adaptation to a specific world, a world of cold winds, towering beasts, and vast open landscapes. When that world fragmented, their fate was sealed not by weakness but by the profound transformation of their environment and the arrival of a species equipped for rapid change. Their disappearance was not the end of their influence, but the beginning of a shared human story. Through interbreeding, cultural contact, and ecological legacy, Neanderthals helped shape the path of Homo sapiens. Their strengths, their adaptations, and their struggles are woven into the fabric of who we are today. And though their fires have long since gone cold, the memory of their endurance remains, written in caves, embedded in genomes, and preserved in the silent stones of a world they once ruled. Don't forget to subscribe. It really supports the channel and helps us bring you more great stories.